welcome to day 16 of Critical Encounters Villainous Yule calendar for December 2022. Here, we get in the holiday spirit and take a quick look at some random festive aspects of the game. So let's peek behind the door and see what our so-called villains are up to.
All right, gather around by the fire. We are going to continue our Santa lore. Part 3. Affected by the new reality of the ever-changing, Santa at least once attempted to modernize. He took to wearing a smaller beard, using a more lavish fake beard on Christmas. The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals then forced Santa to rebuild his sleigh so that it ran on its own power, not being pulled by the reindeer. Claus initially used steam until an oil company representative, possibly from Roxxon Oil Company, convinced him to switch over to high-octane fuel. Caught up in this trend, Santa opened up a nuclear power plant and gas station at the North Pole. The plant was actually controlled, however, by greedy Killerwatt, who had been a jumper, that's a worker hired to enter hot areas of nuclear plants to do various tasks. What could go wrong, right?
Mm.
This jumper mutated into a form resembling a light bulb, who intended to take over Christmas in revenge against society for his mutation. Santa took in a convict named Pinball Lizard after conferring with his parole officer as director of his fun and games department. However, Pinball Lizard fell in with greedy Killerwatt, who used his powers to change Pinball into a lizard-like being, as well as mutating many of Santa's elves into trolls. Attempting to destroy Santa Claus by putting an insufficient amount of gas in his sleigh so that he would crash, Pinball took over the workshop and forced the unmutated elves to construct mass-produced, shoddy toys while Santa went on his rounds. Santa crashed in Cleveland, where he encountered Howard the Duck. Discovering that he was out of fuel, Santa realized that since gas rationing was in effect, he could not get enough fuel to return to the Arctic. However, Howard, who worked at the To Hackenback taxi company at the time, offered to let Claus use their pumps. Howard filled the tank, and he and the young Carol Starkowitz, that's daughter of Claude Starkowitz, the designer of the Iron Duck armor, went to the North Pole with Claus. Mrs. Claus told him of Pinball Lizard's rebellion, and Santa, Howard, Carol, the loyal elves, toys animated by elf magic, and a gun-toting elf named Sunquist, originally from Florida, drove off Pinball Lizard and his that aside wasn't me, by the way, that's actually in here. Drove off Pinball Lizard and his trolls, who escaped via dirigible. However, the nuclear power plant still threatened to melt down through the center of the Earth until it reached Antarctica, thus destroying the world. Pinball Lizard rendezvoused with Killerwatt, who dispatched mutated seals, polar bears, penguins, and whales against Howard the Duck and his compatriots, who were joined by Chief Olakuk of the local Inuit tribe. Howard and Carol sidestepped the mutated animals to find Pinball Lizard, whom Howard speared in the tail. Sunquist shot Killerwatt in the head, and the injury undid his mutations, returning Pinball Lizard and the others to normal. Santa promised then to shut down the nuclear power plant, swearing to convert the toy shop to solar power and to power his sleigh with organic fuels, as Sunquist had recommended all along. More recently, a criminal scam artist, working as a mall Santa, asked children where they lived so he could deliver their presents. He then appeared at their windows dressed as Santa, duping the children into letting him in, after which he would loot their house. Spider-Man, the Peter Parker version, eventually encountered the thief, who fled to the roof, where the real Santa Claus, angry at the misuse of his identity, scared the thief into giving up crime before Spider-Man arrived. For a time, Santa used his knowledge of who was naughty and who was nice to become the world's greatest detective as Nick St. Christopher. In this role, he aided the She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, in locating evidence for a murder investigation. Entranced by the She-Hulk, St. Christopher made a pass at her, but then Mrs. Claus arrived to corral him and to punish She-Hulk by filling her office with reindeer droppings. Before departing, St. Christopher gave She-Hulk a present, telling her to use it on Christmas for something special. When she was later trapped in She-Hulk form, she opened the present, which allowed her to return to her human form, celebrate a normal Christmas evening with her father, Boris Walters. Santa's good nature has proven capable of softening even the hardest of hearts. One year, Santa was injured while visiting Latveria, and monarch Victor von Doom, perhaps one of his lifelike Doom bots, replaced Santa in delivering toys that year. Madman Dr. Octopus, Otto Octavius, once took over Santa's workshop, imprisoned Claus, and forced his elves to create deadly toys that would be sent out to injure children. Scott Lang's daughter, Cassie, received one of these toys. Destroying the toy, Lang, as Ant-Man, traveled to the North Pole to investigate. Discovering Dr. Octopus's role in the affair, Lang shrank him down so they were the same size and then battled him. During their struggle, Santa Claus managed to free himself and used his powers to restore both Ant-Man and Dr. Octopus to normal size. Dr. Octopus attempted to escape, but Rudolph stopped him. Octopus then agreed to help Santa Claus load up his sleigh, and Santa Claus used his powers to shrink the load down. Another year, demoralized by mankind's lack of faith and belief, Santa sold his entire franchise to the terrorists of Hydra. Around the same time, Howard the Duck had been drafted by his partner, Beverly Switzler, to act as a mall Santa, aka Santa's helper, at the Mondo Mega Mall after the regular helper had been injured in an escalator accident. One of Santa's elves recruited a number of the other Santa's helpers, including Howard the Duck, Vito Claus, Bubba Claus, Santa Claus, Claus Tzu Song, Sanity Claus, Sanity Claus, and Willie Lumpkin Claus to prevent Hydra from ruining Christmas. Ultimately, Howard and the recently orphaned Dionysus Finster, who had latched onto Howard as the mall Santa and accompanied him to North Pole, convinced Santa to renege on his deal with Hydra, to join forces with Santa and the elves to drive off the commando corps of Hydra accountants. One Christmas, Santa aided the young mutant team Generation X against the youth abducting nanny and orphan maker. Another year, the doorman, Damar Davis, who had recently been drafted as the Avatar of Oblivion, encountered Santa and asked him for a Christmas miracle for his dad. Some toy he'd always longed for ever since he was a kid, something to teach him the true meaning of Christmas and help forge a bond between father and son or something. Unfortunately, as Christmas Eve was Santa's busiest time of year, he didn't have time to help out Doorman, though later he was able to join Doorman and his teammates, the GLX, the Great Lakes X-Men, later the Great Lakes Initiative, on their Christmas celebration. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed that. That was our special gift to you. You want to send us holiday gifts? You can email us at criticalencounterspod@gmail.com. We are Critical Encounters on Facebook, or you can find us on YouTube by searching for Critical Encounters Podcast. And on Discord, we are Vardane, Big Fumblo, and Wandering Took. If you like our show, tell Santa. If you don't like our show, tell Krampus. Good night, everyone.
This is Thunderball with the Illuminati, wishing you a scroll-free holiday.